Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Shred and Soul.
I'm Shred, aka Kevin Wood.
And I'm Soul, aka Wind Hughes. We were really excited about our last episode talking about aliens and other beings who could be here, visiting here, why they're here, that we wanted to share some of the information we acquired along the way, researching and just in general in our lives. And some of the things we've looked at are structures around the world that defy explanation.
Yeah. How are these things built and why?
Yeah.
Ancient structures that defy any sort of concrete explanation. I mean, they're there. For instance, they're parts of what you might call the wonders of the world, and everyone knows people flock to these places, but still there's not a concrete explanation as to why and how these places were put together.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we have so many of these places around the globe, and we go to them or we visit them and don't really bring that critical thinking of how the hell did they get that stone. And so personally for me, I wanted to start with the pyramids around the world. And there are pyramids everywhere. We tend to think of the ones in Giza in Egypt, where, for example, there are 200 to 255 pyramids in Sudan, which is where the Nubian people were, which is adjacent to Egypt. The Nubians were part of that territory. There are 118 to 138 in Egypt. There are 100 plus in Mexico, 40 to 50 in China. And there's many, many more around the world. And these are just the ones that have already been seen above ground, not the ones that they know are beneath necessarily and yet to be excavated. So thousands of pyramids. So when I mention these details about the ones in Egypt, think of it as replicated in various sizes and dimensions around the world.
There are even some pyramids that have been discovered under the sea.
And here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's amazing to think of these structures being around everywhere. So the only one of the places we're going to mention today I've been to is in Egypt, the pyramids in Egypt. And as you'll see in the photo, these stones are absolutely enormous. There is no way that a human being could move these stones. And I went to the quarry where that was their main quarry, miles and miles away in Egypt, where they would get the large granite stones. I mean, huge, huge pieces of uninterrupted solid granite, and they'd have to cart it somehow down to where the pyramids were. And when you look at that terrain and the size of these things, you think there's no way in heck that these folks, without the technology we have today, did it. So here's some information. The stones, as you see in the picture, of the main pyramids are considered roughly around 80 tons per stone.
80 tons.
80 tons. That's 160,000 pounds per stone. And there's so many. The pyramids are enormous and they're so tall. And as you know, the shape of the pyramid, they're bringing these stones up to the cap, to the top. And so when you look at that and you stand next to them, it's pretty obvious that and it was built in less than 20 years. So in 20 years, somehow all these people and the labor and the ability to do this supposedly existed. I don't think so. So one of the things that's really interesting is the pyramids are aligned to certain celestial bodies, and Orion's belt. You look at all the way the periods are, and they align and point directly to the main 3 stars of Orion's belt, which is very interesting. They are oriented to true north with precision. So how do they get 160,000 pound stones, all of them built, and keep the alignment perfectly to true north and to the stars of the Orion belt? That's precision, not possible supposedly in our narrative about what life was like in Egypt then. And How do you do that? They figure that the solar alignment for the equinoxes, solstices, things like that are aligned perfectly, so shadows cast through certain chambers at an exact time of the year. And what was that about? You could dive into this. There's a lot of theory behind that. And as we know now, the structure under the pyramids go way, way down now. The coils and the chambers and the things that we've just discovered down.
2 separate studies
have confirmed this now.
that there are huge structures underneath
the pyramids. Yeah. So you think of that replicated by the thousands around the globe, and the pyramid roughly built around 5,000, just under 5,000 years ago. It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about that. And when you go to the quarries and you go stand next to the stones and see the size, you know that there's a lot more to the story than we're hearing. So why were they built? Were they built as transmitters? Were they built as power sources, generators? Were they to empower ships coming, to empower, who knows?
How were they built?
How were they built?
One thing that blows my mind when I think about this, from what I understand, the outer skin of the pyramid was covered in a white granite to make it look smooth, and it was capped with gold on the top.
Yeah.
Now I can conceptualize, moving big blocks of building materials. I don't know how they would do it back then, or nobody does, but to cover that with a smooth finished granite over the top of it, and cap it with a gold top. It's just, the level of engineering it's astounding.
It would be a feat today.
Yeah.
It would be a major feat today to do it, not just like in Las Vegas where it appears that way, but to actually structure it and with what's beneath the ground. Yeah, absolutely mind-blowing. Yeah. So if you ever have the chance to go to Europe or Mexico or some of the places where these pyramids exist, you go with that perspective of not necessarily the narrative that we have to explain how they tied it on ropes and people pulled it on rollers. Like, no way, I've been there. No way.
Yeah, well, I've never been there, but I take your word for it. These blocks are just too enormous to imagine anybody.
And the distance, from where the quarries were, and where they were taken to the site of the pyramid is long.
Right, and if this is an interesting fact that'll lead us into our next site. There's a line. If you follow the position of the Great Pyramid. And you draw a line from that, the line will circle the globe and pass through Machu Picchu, Easter Island, and I think there's another site with significant sites. The Nazca lines, which are the lines that were written or carved out of the earth in Peru, that you can only see from there. But Machu Picchu that is connected to this line, and it circles the globe in kind of it's not like part of the longitude
or latitude. And it doesn't follow an exact latitudinal line.
Those lines are man-made.
Is it more diagonal in a sense?
It's more diagonal. And these sites all reside on this line. And there have been further studies that look at the angles. Say if you're on one side of the globe and you want to get to, say, Machu Picchu from the Great Pyramid, and you look at the angles from that to possibly another point to Easter Island, these angles all add up to an indication of Fibonacci sequences. And so it seems like it's by design somehow.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one of the main differences between the Great Pyramid or the pyramids of Egypt is that Machu Picchu was constructed, or they figure the construction started in the mid-1400s and ended in about the mid-1500s when the Spanish came in. And so this is not a super ancient site. But when you look at Machu Picchu, you go there and you look at the structures, the level of stonework is mind-blowing. We're talking the stones are set together with such precision you couldn't even get a playing card in between them. And some of them weigh like 100 tons, 100,000 tons. It's just mind-boggling. And another similarity to the pyramids is that these structures are aligned with celestial events, the solstice, and they are also aligned with the Pleiades.
Pleiades?
Yeah, the stars and Orion's belt. So very distinct similarities. And I was looking at a chart earlier today and realizing that, okay, in Egypt you have a pyramid site here, a pyramid site here, a pyramid site here. They all converge on a point in space. And in Peru, the Machu Picchu is the most famous of the ancient cities. It's the lost city. But there are also two other cities that are in alignment that do exactly the same thing as the pyramids in Egypt. They're aligned celestially to in very similar manners. So it just doesn't seem like it can be an accident. It seems like it would have to be by some design.
And what is it? The ley lines of the planet that are in that line? Is it power points? Is it the way it lines up gravitational fields at certain times of the month of the year that maybe they could land or leave? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, that's the mystery. Who knows? And Machu Picchu is a very famous spot. People go there for all kinds of reasons to commune there. Just to look around because it's a beautiful spot up on the top of a mountain, and the mystery surrounding it, and the energy too. I think that it's probably no accident that it is there, along with other sites that are on that same curvature of the Earth, that same line, and maybe some sort of energy vortex.
Or what if some of these places were back in the day, safe spaces for beings that were here that were not of Earth, that were visitors, or as we've talked about before, the Anunnaki or the star beings that were here and were pretty much mastering the globe. And everywhere around the world we have myths of giants and other beings that were here interacting and interbreeding with us. And one of the things in Egypt, and I know some of these other ones, is that I was blown away by, had not anticipated, even though I'd seen the photos, was the size, not just of the blocks, but when you're walking through the ruins or the temples, the size of the pillars and the doorways are not scaled to human size. They are scaled in these massive doors, archways, as if giants would be moving through them. And the pillars that were holding up ceilings are like 3 stories high, more. I was blown away, at the proportion of the size, and thought this doesn't make sense. And their story would be, the kings or the pharaohs wanted to have the bigger, most badass building to scare off enemies and all. But that might be the historian's story, certainly not the story of other people in Egypt and around the world, is why would they make such mammoth-sized buildings and doorways and hallways?
And it seems widespread, the idea that there were giants in ancient times. The Plain of Jars in Laos. In Laos, there is a region that is covered with these giant stone jars. And they range from 10 feet tall to 4 feet tall, but they're very heavy, and they come from rock that does not come from the area where they're situated. And these jars, you use the term jars because they kind of look like jars. They're like bowl-shaped, carved out pieces of rock that you could put stuff in. So they're jars, right? And so the ancient ones, or the ancient myth about this phenomenon, is that they were used by a race of giants and created there. But they still don't know why these jars are there. People speculate that they were used for funerary purposes, maybe putting remains in, but
About storing food or storing grain
or
or
water or something. But
yeah.
why would you have a 10-ton jar sitting on a hillside to contain water, or to use it once for a funerary pyre? It just doesn't add up, and so it's baffling. Why are these gigantic stone jars even here? And maybe they were left over by some sort of other worldly race, or the Anunnaki, or uh, beings that were like the Anunnaki. It's really hard to say because these things are ancient and still no explanation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no explanation for the structures, for the jars, for so many things. That we see that I think a lot of folks don't realize just how many of these sort of things there are. They might hear about crop circles, or they might hear about a pyramid, but they don't they're not historians, archaeologists, and they aren't diving into this. But once you start, pulling the thread on this sweater, it's pretty mind blowing.
Yeah.
And one that I have not seen personally, but I sure would love to, in Micronesia. I've seen specials on and read about and seen videos about this. This was constructed in the 12th and 13th centuries. So again, not too far from the Machu Picchu. It's certainly like within a certain period when maybe these other beings were here. And this is an entire city that's built of mainly basalt and other stones. And as you'll see in the picture, it is built on coral reefs. And so it's built up as if these little living areas, they're not little, they're big, towns, neighborhoods float in the water, but they're actually on top of a really deep coral reef. But it's constructed pretty much out of basalt logs, and this says up to 50 tons each log, which is 100,000 pounds. And so when you think of what it would take, these are out in the water. There isn't anywhere to get these there without floating these giant logs.
And these logs, use the term log because that's what they look like. They're actually pieces of basalt that are, when basalt is formed volcanically, is deposited, and as it cools, it cracks and separates and creates these tubular-shaped logs. You can call them logs, and that's what they were pulling off of the sides of the hills in these
in volcanic areas that are miles and miles and miles away.
Miles and miles away.
Yeah, so they had to find them and somehow excavate them out of there and move them. And this is like it's over 100 basalt log structures just to hold this thing up, and it's connected through canals and walkways that are above the water. So you'll see in the photo how there are different sections and it's removed from land. How did they get there? How did they navigate this? Who could have possibly built this? And again, like you've said, the precision of these walls with no mortar or channels to hold them in place is beyond anything even modern engineering could do. And the labor that it would take to align these stones and build these canals is pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, and one of the legends on how these things were created was a flying dragon that could carry these stones and place them where they need to be in order to construct this site.
So what might that be? In looking into the legend, there's some say, twin brothers were fighting over this, or giants again. And so what could a dragon be? Could it be a vessel? Could it be a ship? Could it be a helicopter-like thing? Could it be some sort of plane or
levitation device
or something? But I'm thinking more of an actual, like a plane or something that takes flight and can actually carry these things and move them, or something, as they say, these giants who did this levitated these stones, and they have accounts of these stones moving through space and precisely being placed into position. So this non-Madal in Micronesia is a definitely fascinating place to check out and jump into the where and the why and how it may have been used.
Yeah, it is just fascinating to us to think about this stuff and to wonder about it. As things come together, new light is always shed on some of these mysteries, and I can't help but to think that one of the tenets of today's thinking, I think, is that we've lost a lot through the centuries. What we're trying to gain back with technology, we used to have in our capabilities. And who's to say that our capabilities in the past, if we were not visited or helped by ancient alien technology, but enabled our ability to levitate things, move things with our minds, because what we're looking at is matter, and matter is composed of atomic particles that have huge amounts of space between them, and it's our concepts and our feeling of solidness that maybe takes over and makes it so, our capabilities aren't put together anymore to move giant things. And or maybe the ancient ones had this ability, the giants, and they're gone now, and they left us with nothing but questions.
They left us with their garbage dumps. Yeah, so is it, visitors or beings who've been there? I do believe, based on, the legends, the myths, the written accounts of every culture around the world, pretty much speaking of a giant race, really tall people, and of these powers that, for me, that's my sense of what it was. But one of the things you mentioned, which I think is really important when we reflect upon history, or things that are paranormal, or things like this that just don't fit into our modern day narrative in any way, is that we look at these things through our limitation, right? In our minds, you can't levitate things, or in our minds, you can't whatever. So we have a limitation in how we view possibility based on our human current experience. And what if, as you said, which I believe is true too, we at one time did have this expanded consciousness and the ability to navigate through the physical realm in a very different way, which could mean levitation, which could mean, telepathy and communication, and all these abilities that we've since lost, and also other beings here. And so if you look at what's left behind, the structures, the tablets with the stories, the written stories, the oral traditions have passed down what their stories are. And you look at documented archaeology too, you see these patterns and you see these stories of structures, of peoples, of artifacts that point to other beings having been here and sharing knowledge with us, and that corresponds around the world with things like the Great Flood. The timing corresponds. The appearance of these giants, how long they've been here, corresponds to a lot of natural events and things that have occurred too. So it's difficult to doubt it. I mean, I don't doubt it. For me, when you spend so much time as we have, and I know I have in my life, researching these things, the puzzle pieces just all snap together so easily. But it's pretty mind-blowing when you actually embrace the possibility.
It is mind-blowing. And if this ability once was ours, and if it was shared to us or shared by a race of people who are no longer here, but if it is truly part of us, and I believe it probably still is, there's a chance that we can reclaim some of these things. And, our technology is making these things possible now, but what if we could move giant stones with a thought, or communicate with other people without a phone or a text message? You were saying last week that you had experiences of communication, nonverbal communication.
Actual conversation. And we all have a lot of that we may not register it, that, most of us have had that moment where we, thinking about a friend and then they call. Or on one of the kids, I'll call them and they'll say, "Oh, I just picked up the phone to call you," or vice versa. Or you sense something happening. We all have that ability and have experiences of it constantly. We may not necessarily identify it for what it is. We just chalk it up to coincidence or something else. But we have those kinds of knowing all the time, whether we identify it or not.
Right. Levitation, moving objects. There's very little of that going on, but I do register with this energy of communication, with thoughts of people who automatically show up, or they, the synchronicities of life. They're all around us.
I'm looking behind you for a book. I don't know where it would be on the shelf, but there's a wonderful book called Autobiography of a Yogi, and each chapter is on a different master.
Mm-hmm.
And each master, in a sense, has some amazing ability. One of them never eats or drinks. One of them levitates, and each chapter pretty much points to a master that has some ability beyond what we would normally consider ordinary human ability. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, there anything else in there you were gonna?
Well,
share?
There's a ton of information out there about all of this stuff, and we just touched on
a few.
But there's Easter Island. There's Angkor Wat.
There are pyramids in Mexico. There are temples.
Yeah, all of these sites with these carvings.
Chaco Canyon.
The people who used to live in our Southwest in America here, they disappeared right around that same time that the people who were dealing or living in Machu Picchu or building Machu Picchu, something happened.
When you look at the ruins there, right, the plates are in place. Mm-hmm. Everything is in place, as if the people just vanished in the middle of their day. Mm-hmm. So there's
mysteries.
Yeah, mysteries, and just examples of ordinary abilities that we no longer are capable of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who's to say that these people didn't just dematerialize?
They said, "Beam me up, Scotty."
Yeah, exactly.
Even back then, they're get me out of here.
Because the Spanish were coming and they were going to mess everything up. So let's get out of here, right?
Could have been.
I don't know, but yeah, fascinating.
Mm-hmm. So enjoy the photos that we post out, and dive into these things. Maybe these few examples would be a way for you to kind of get going and start digging into this, because it's fascinating and really significant in terms of understanding our presence here on Earth.
I hope you've enjoyed our little presentation, and maybe it triggers some thoughts. Or if you have ideas about this stuff or your own personal experiences or insights, mention those in the comments.
Yeah, or you can email us, which sometimes people like to do if they don't want to make a public comment, at shredandsoul@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. Do a like, just a little like, subscribe, all of those things.
All of that.
Yeah.
And we'll be back next week with a new topic.
Yeah.
And
see you then.
See you then.